As you can see, I came up with the idea to mount another collector's edition item, namely this PHSB carburetor from Dell'Orto. It used to be called smoothbore because the carburetor is designed that way that two drums or two cases are built into one another. I'll show you on this other one. Can you see that? You can't get through here because these are two housings inside each other. And if I stick a slider in there, then you see how they run into each other. Back in the day, that was really hot shit at Dell'Orto. Today, it's rather antique. But fact is that the Dell'Orto carburetors fit best on the BFA engine because there is relatively little space between the fan casing and the shock absorber. I have one of these PHSB carburetors in size 35 here. I wanted a slightly smaller carburetor for the touring scooter, not 38, 39 or 40. And the 35 one also has the feature that the Venturi is V-shaped here. This should help with the throttle response, but also leads to the opening being a bit smaller than with a 35mm carburetor. I hope that it fits quite well though. The only problem I have now is that the build of this carburetor is always a little bit different. Luckily, I have a small collection of these things and now I'm just thinking about what the best initial setup might be. I'll start with a 190 main jet and a 55 idle jet, mixer tube 266, and then I'll have a look first whether, and if so, how it works. But first, I have to build a full carburetor out of all the bits and pieces that I have here, make everything nice and clean, and assemble everything. The scooter looks pretty solid so far. I could almost test the engine. However, what is still missing is the gasoline system, carburetor, and everything that somehow goes away from the carburetor to the frame. That's why I want to start with wiring the things up, which have to be finished first, before I can install the tank. And the first thing I want to work on here is the choke lever. Since I plan to build in the big prototype tank, I have a little less space for the choke lever, so I'm using a 90-degree cable band. And since the distance is a little longer than with the original carburetor, I use a throttle cable next. A special item that I want to point out is our SIP choke lever. It allows you to very easily connect universal pull choke Bowden cables by simply putting the cable through here and fastening it to the grub screw with a small Allen wrench or a small inner hexagonal tool. At the end, you just snap what is left over here. This thing here is just a rubber protection. Let's see if that is the right length. So, I've just measured at those already mounted and existing parts and how long my choke lever has to be. The conversion kit for a pull choke is now installed here, and I also installed the 90-degree cable band here. Then I have held the rope in here and measured how long the outside cables should be to make sure that it works properly. And now I have to take it off. Now, the choke lever from SIP comes into play. The Bowden cable can go through here. Now I can tighten the grub screw with the Allen wrench while it is installed. Now, the choke should automatically be perfectly adjusted. Now it's drawn, now it's not. If this setup works out or not, we'll find out when we head for the first test drive. Alright, that was nice and easy, and now, bam, cut this thing off. Next, the throttle cable can be attached. It is always important that it functions freely, But this is often a bit difficult as it's quite long and the resilience of the carburetor is usually not particularly high.
Nicht sonderlich hoch im Normalfall.
This setup here is a bit of an ancient system with the carburetor that I've got here.
Altertümliches System. So.
Alright, now we have almost everything ready. What's still missing is the fuel supply and the connection of the ignition. I would like to start with the fuel supply, and with the BFA motor we have a special feature that I would like to use. The BFA engine has a vacuum connection as standard. And as you can see, my tank has a fuel pump already pre-installed to which the vacuum connection is connected. And it's also connected to the tube here. I'm going to take a nice bend-proof tube with a steel jack like this. It fits on the vacuum connection here and also my vacuum connection there on the engine. Well, I think I'll probably deal with all of this much later. Do you like that? But seriously, I just noticed that when I plug the tank in... Whatever, I'll just show you for the camera. Okay, can you film how I stick it through down here? And then can you film how I plug it in here?
Magst du filmen, wie ich ihn hier anstecke?
I secure the vacuum connection with a small clamp. Okay, let's do another fun little camera setting where I'll put the fuel hose on, which of course is a complete lie, because everything has to be removed again afterwards. But who cares? Next I'll lay the fuel hose. But I'll leave it on there only temporarily, because I'll have to do another job there later. What's still missing now is the ignition. The ignition is relatively easy to connect because the ignition coil is connected with the stator via a plug, and this is done relatively fast. Be careful though that there is no tension on it. Later, I'll put that in the right position with cable ties. And then there's our cable branch, which is coming from the chassis. Since this was originally made for an original ignition, I have to knit it around a bit. This is the off cable, which is connected to this cable here. That's relatively easy. And then we have these two cables coming from the Vape ignition, namely plus and minus, blue and black. Everything is connected a little differently than originally. In our case, we take the purple and the yellow wires, and the black and red ones can rest.
Schwarz und Rot haben Pause.